Revelation 12:12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has but a short time. So this is a PDF that I found on one of the discords that I'm on. A shout out to Peter the Great for putting me onto this gem. All right, if you're watching Peter the Great, hey, this one's for you. All right, this document was comprised by the George Washington University, as well as the NCITE, the National Counterterrorism, Innovation, Technology, and Education Center. All right, you have a lot of media watchdog groups, a lot of high-end universities, intelligentsia organizations that have a lot of time, money, resources, and connections into painting a narrative about us. All right, painting us nothing more than a bunch of bloodthirsty savages and animals. Okay, they have files comprised on us based off of the content we consume, from a social media that we consume, the videos that we watch, the videos that we make. All right, so it's nice to be mindful of these things. All right, this thing is called Contemporary Violent Extremism and the Black Hebrew Israelite Movement. Let's get more info on this. Executive summary. This report evaluates violent extremism inspired by or connected to the Black Hebrew Israelite or BHI movement. Black Hebrew Israelites ascribe to the idea that modern-day African Americans are the descendants of the Israelites in the Old Testament of the Bible. However, an extremist fringe within the movement takes this idea one step further, arguing that white Europeans are the descendants of Satan and that white Jews are imposters, situating the role of extremist interpretations of BHI ideology within domestic violent extremist incidents during the past several years. This report finds, like other domestic violent extremist movements in the contemporary American landscape, Black Hebrew Israelite violent extremism has undergone a transformation over the past 20 years. All right, this is the point that I highlighted. The predominant threat today is from individuals loosely affiliated with or inspired by the movement rather than by groups, organizations, or institutions. All right, a lot of lone wolves, a lot of individualites, they're not under, the bonds of government watch or government restrictions, so they're going to be a little bit more harder to control or harder to get to compared to organizations and groups such as, the ICGJC, IUIC, GOCC, or ISUPK, which are under 501c3s. Okay? Reading on, the diversity of ideological influences weighing on the BHI movement also characterized the range of socio-political engagement methods in use by the movement's followers. This is particularly true with the movement's extremist fringe, which expands the idea of black descendants from the biblical Israelites to argue, inter alia, that white people are the offspring of Satan and that today's white Jews are usurpers or imposters. Arguably, the decisive line separating the vast majority of BHI adherents who do not subscribe to these claims and BHI extremists are their views on Jews who are not in the movement, or the BHI movement. Most BHIs view white Jews as legitimately Jewish. The BHI fringe believes that they are Edomites, the descendants of the biblical figure Esau, thus place them outside of the fold of the biblical Israelites who are the descendants of Esau's brother Jacob and or the synagogue of Satan, referencing Revelation 3:9. So right here, this document, they're basically making comparisons on, the soft-hidden Israelites, people in the knowledge that, that don't go hard on Esau or don't go hard on prophecy. All right, they don't pose that much of a threat compared to people that actually expose the truth, that actually expose, the rules of this society. Okay, those people they're going to be more subject onto watch. All right, more subject onto, I guess a prudent eye, so to speak. Reading on, sadly, the most publicly visible aspects of the BHI movement today are arguably representative of this fringe. Residents of major American cities, particularly on the East Coast, are perhaps most familiar with extremist BHI groups due to their employment of causatic street preaching, in which groups of members of BHI extremist factions like the One West Camp, the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, or the ISUPK, and others verbally accost passerbys around busy intersections and major public transportation hubs in New York City, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, and other cities. BHI extremist public demonstrations, referred to by adherents as camps, are highly confrontational, frequently imbued with the extremist BHI fringes most vitriolic beliefs, including anti-Semitism, Holocaust denialism, misogynistic and homophobic beliefs, and calls for white people to be sold into slavery, and in the 21st century are increasingly broadcast online. While they are corrosive, they rarely spill over into violence. Okay, get this, that notwithstanding the rhetoric and viewpoints expressed during these rallies, alongside the involvement of specific BHI groups in the criminal underworld, have led to several notable instances of BHI adherents planning and executing violent attacks. Because of this, federal law enforcement has constantly assessed that quote-unquote extreme elements of the BHI movement are prone to engage in violent activity. All right, and get this, there is a such thing as called the Manchurian Candidate. Okay, these program assets are paid to act as dummies and to, again, basically paying us as animals, as if every single person who holds these set views have plans and have actual motivation to actually commit an atrocity like this. Okay, that's what they do. All right, they program people, they program random people off the street to join these organizations and do some silly shit, really as an attempt to put blame on the ministry. Okay, that's what it's all about. One of the main organizations behind all the narratives that are getting pushed is an organization called the Anti-Defamation League, or the ADL. I'm pretty sure most of you guys have heard about this organization already. They've been in the news quite frequently over the past 5 to 6 years. We're going to go into the origins behind this group, the power they've exuded into fulfilling their interests even during its inception, and how they still continue to exert their power even onto this day. The Anti-Defamation League, formerly known as the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, is an international Jewish non-governmental organization based in the United States that specializes in civil rights law and combats anti-Semitism and extremism. It was founded in late September of 1913 by the Independent Order of B'nai B'rith, a Jewish service organization, in the wake of the contentious murder conviction of Leo Frank. ADL subsequently split from B'nai B'rith and continued as an independent U.S. Section 501c3 nonprofit. Its CEO is Jonathan Greenblatt, who succeeded Abraham Foxman in July of 2015. Foxman has served in the role since 1987. Initially, the League largely represented Midwestern and Southern Jews concerned with antagonistic portrayals of Jewish people in popular culture, along with social and economic discrimination. In 1913, Atlanta B'nai B'rith president Leo Frank was convicted of the murder of a 13-year-old employee at a factory where he was a superintendent. Historians today generally consider Frank to have been innocent. Jewish leadership viewed Frank as having been wrongly prosecuted, and convicted because of local anti-Semitism and agitation by some of the local press. The role that prejudice played in Frank's conviction was mentioned by Adolf Krauss when he announced the creation of the ADL. According to historians, the ADL's early strategy would be to pressure newspapers, theaters, and other businesses seen as defaming or discriminating against Jews. Proposed methods included boycotts and pressuring advertisers, and it also considered demanding prior reviews of theater productions for anti-Semitism. After Georgia's outgoing governor commuted Frank's death sentence to life imprisonment in 1915, a lynch mob abducted Frank from prison and killed him. Frank was granted a posthumous pardon from Georgia in 1986 after the ADL request. So this is an article that I found pertaining to somebody who did some research on Frank's guilt, actually. First, I'm going to read this. It says, first, Lindemann demonstrated that there was no evidence of any anti-Semitism behind Frank's arrests and conviction, with Jews constituting a highly valued element of the affluent Atlantic society of the day. and no references to Frank's Jewish background, negative or otherwise, appearing in the media prior to the trial. Indeed, 5 of the grand jurors who voted to indict Frank for murder were themselves Jewish, and none of them ever voiced regret over their decision. In general, support for Frank seems to have been strongest among Jews from New York and other distant parts of the country, and weakest among the Atlanta Jews with best knowledge of the local situation. And he's really just summarizing information from a book that he found on the right hand side called The Jew Accursed by Albert S. Lindemann. I'm reading on this article. It says the facts of the case against Frank eventually became a remarkable tangle of complex and often conflicting evidence and eyewitness testimony, with sworn statements regularly being retracted and then counter-retracted. But the crucial point that the NOI authors emphasize, I guess he read another book, giving another summary of a book that he read, announcing Frank's guilt. It says, but the crucial point that the NOI authors emphasize for properly deciphering this confusing situation is the enormous scale of the financial resources that were deployed on Frank's behalf, both prior to the trial and afterward, with virtually all of the funds coming from Jewish sources. Currency conversations are hardly precise, but relative to the American family incomes of the time, the total expenditures by Frank's supporters may have been as high as $25 million in present-day dollars, quite possibly more than any other homicide defense in American history before or after, and almost an unimaginable sum for the impoverished Deep South of that period. Years later, a leading donor privately admitted that much of this money was spent on perjury and similar falsifications, something which is very readily apparent to anyone who closely studies the case. When we consider this vast ocean of pro-Frank funding and the sordid means for which it was often deployed, the details of the case become far less mysterious. There exists a mountain of demonstrably fabricated evidence and false testimony in favor of Frank, and no sign of anything similar on the other side. In many respects, the more important part of the Frank case began after his conviction and death sentence, when many of America's wealthiest and most influential Jewish leaders began mobilizing to save him from the hangman. They soon established the ADL as a new vehicle for that purpose, and succeeded in making the Frank murder case one of the most famous in American history to that date. This is another key point that I highlighted here. Get this, although the role was largely concealed at the time, the most important new backer whom Frank attracted was Albert Lasker of Chicago, the unchallenged monarch of American consumer advertising, which constituted the life's blood of all of our mainstream newspapers and magazines. Not only did he ultimately provide the lion's share of the funds for Frank's defense, but he focused his energies upon shaping the media coverage surrounding the case. Given his dominant business influence in that sector, we should not be surprised that a huge wave of unremitting pro-Frank propaganda soon began appearing across the country in both local and national publications, extending to most of America's most popular and highly regarded media outlets, with scarcely a single word told on the other side of the story. This even included all of Atlanta's own leading newspapers, which suddenly reversed their previous positions and became convicted of Frank's innocence. Lasker also enlisted other powerful Jewish figures in the Frank cause, including New York Times owner Adolph Oakes, American Jewish Committee President Louis Marshall, and leading Wall Street financier Jacob Schiff. The Times, in particular, began devoting enormous coverage to this previously obscure Georgia murder case, and many of his articles were widely republished elsewhere. Back a century ago, just as today, our media creates our reality, and with Frank's innocence being proclaimed nationwide in near unanimous fashion, a long list of prominent figures were soon persuaded to demand a new trial for the convicted murderer, including Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and Jane Addams. With the New York Times and the rest of the liberal northern media now providing such heavy coverage of the case, Frank's defense team was forced to abandon the racially inflammatory rhetoric aimed at his black accuser, which had previously been the centerpiece of their trial strategy. Instead, they began concocting a tale of rampant local anti-Semitism, previously unnoticed by all observers, and adopted it as a major grounds for the repeal of the verdict. For almost 2 years, the nearly limitless funds deployed by Frank's supporters covered the costs of 13 separate appeals on the state and federal levels, including to the U.S. Supreme Court, All the national media was used to endlessly vilify Georgia's system of justice in the harshest possible terms. Naturally, this soon generated a local reaction, and during this period, outraged Georgians began denouncing the wealthy Jews who were spending such enormous sums to subvert the local criminal justice system. So that's pretty much the gist right there, okay? These people got together, established their funds, established their resources and connections to paint a narrative of anti-Semitism that wasn't even there to begin with. The same way that these people had their hands in the media back then, they have their hands in the media today on a much more broader and wider scale. And due to the rise of the internet, the Most High is putting the spirit of curiosity among people to search out their wicked deeds and to search out their agendas that they have in store for the future. And they do not like that. All right, and these powers that be, they're willing to go above and beyond to demonize and to silence anybody that calls out their bullshit. So I came across a series of tweets by a guy who interviewed directors of the ADL who were basically talking about the many ways they monitor and that they track people who are quote-unquote extremist or have questionable content. And some of the stuff that I found is quite revelatory. So I have a series of videos I want to show you about this. So in this second hidden camera clip, it says he caught the ADL discussing how they attempt to influence Elon Musk to pick and choose who they want to be banned from his platform.
I don't know if you met with Elon or what, but you guys were put out a list that you did not want, that the public and the advertisers did not want unbanned. It was like Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, Donald Trump, Kanye West, and
we definitely do like public statements to make sure that like they are held accountable when there are letters that go. I think like when Elon Musk took over, it was like this is our expectations of you being in this position. Like we want you to be the best, if you want we can be a partner, and here's what our expectations are. So that's definitely something that we've done.
I don't know if you met with Elon or.
Says in this third clip, I caught the ADL admitting to using secret AI tech software to comb through gaming streams and podcasts for extremism. And he's asking these questions: who are they targeting? And who are they to decide who and what is extreme?
Develop this new technology to, because a lot of these sort of extremists have podcasts, but like who has the time to listen to like just them drone on and on, where like 99% of what they're saying is like about video games or something. And so there's this new software that it can actually like scan the entire podcast for like flagged words.
Wow.
And then like extract, like when they talk about some like extremist activity they want to perform, and then it like extracts it out. So I thought that was really cool.
See that?
Develop this new technology.
All right, this one is revelatory in my eyes. It says, in this fourth hidden camera clip, I exposed the ADL admitting to the manipulation and control of crowdfunding platforms like Stripe and GoFundMe. They have the ability to stop payment processing to anyone that spreads a hateful message or a message that they deem quote-unquote hateful.
How much money gets fundraised on some of these platforms for extremists. So a platform like a crowdfunding, a GoFundMe type of place, like they raise, that's how extremists raise their money. And so bringing awareness to some of these companies that your platform is allowing these extremists to raise money for their stuff. And so that was an interesting report that we also kind of did a
So here's the proof right here. It says extremists crowdfunded more than 6.2 million online in recent years, the ADL report finds. It says the ADL tracked campaigns with quote-unquote hateful rhetoric, including anti-Semitism, white supremacy, QAnon conspiracies, and anti-LGBTQ plus extremism. Get this, as well as rhetoric from anti-Semitic sects of quote-unquote black Hebrew Israelites. He added that the crowdfunding platforms must police hateful campaigns, but instead can have lax policies on hate. GoFundMe, the largest such platform, has generated nearly $580,000 for hate groups, overwhelmingly to the anti-Semitic black Hebrew Israelites, despite service terms that prohibit violence, hate, and discrimination according to the ADL. It says GoFundMe has taken some action to remove hateful or extremist campaigns from its site, but its efforts founder when it comes to the BHI movement, which has posted fundraisers for anti-Semitic documentaries and propaganda, the ADL said of the quote-unquote black Hebrew Israelites. Get this, these funds make up 94% of the extremist or hateful campaigns identified by the ADL on GoFundMe. All right, so these boys they're already labeling us as a target, man. All right, the people who push this word will be the number one target, point blank, period. All right, and this is the final one. And it says, in this final clip, I caught the ADL admitting to grooming local and federal law enforcement agencies like the FBI into identifying hate. Okay?
Yeah, so we just established a law enforcement advisory council, which convenes local police departments and other law enforcement agencies all around the state. Sometimes we're called when something happens and then we loop in law enforcement. Sometimes law enforcement reach out to us to see what we know about something.
And making sure that any of the intel that we get on a national level is given to all of our all of the law enforcement locally, and so that the trends that we're seeing.
Yeah, so we just established a law enforcement.
It's not that we've established and identifying one of the main players that are going to be used to control information. The powers that be also have time and invested in controlling our finances as well. We're going to go into how they plan on doing this and the system that they have set in order as a means of controlling us through our financial means. What is central bank digital currency, or CBDC? Central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, are the digital form of a government-issued currency that isn't pegged to a physical commodity. They are issued by central banks whose role is to support financial services for a nation's government and its commercial banking system, set monetary policy, and issue currency. CBDCs are similar to, but not the same, as stablecoins. Stablecoins are a specific type of private stabilized cryptocurrency pegged to another currency, commodity, or financial instrument with the goal of maintaining a relatively stable value over time. Unlike cryptocurrencies, which are decentralized, CBDCs are state-issued and operated. So pretty much, long story short, it's pretty much digital state-owned money backed by central banks. Okay? And even though it may sound good in theory, when you put it into practice and implement a full system based off of it, it's going to be an absolute hell. Okay? When they have access to your money, they pretty much have you by the balls. And due to all of the mass data that's been collected on us by these private companies and even governments to a certain degree, they pretty much can do whatever they want with our money as they see fit. They can turn off our money, they can turn on our money, and they can manipulate it in whatever way, shape, or form they deem right. If you say or do something that's contrary to the narrative or contrary to whatever philosophy or whatever agenda that they have pushed and that they have stored on deck, and even just doing minute things such as, sitting too much or even playing video games or, just doing things or just being slothful in general, like your money can be turned off based off of that. Okay, they already have a system implemented in China based off of it. It's called, I believe it's called, what the fuck is it? A social-based credit system, which we're going to get into right now. It says right here, I got this article from the Insider. It says China's social credit system ranks citizens and punishes them with throttled internet speeds and flight bans if the Communist Party deems them untrustworthy. says China has been rolling out a system that ranks its citizens based on their social credit. People can be punished if they drive badly, buy too many video games, or steal. It's not a unified nationwide system, but China plans on eventually making it mandatory for everyone. It says right here, the Chinese Communist Party has been constructing a moral ranking system for years that will monitor the behavior of its enormous population and rank them all based on their quote-unquote social credit. The social credit system, first announced in 2014, is an important component part of the socialist market economy system and the social governance system. It aims to reinforce the idea that keeping trust is glorious and breaking trust is disgraceful, according to a 2015 government document. Like private credit scores, a person's social score can move up and down depending on their behavior. The exact methodology is a secret, but examples of infractions include bad driving, smoking and non-smoking zones, buying too many video games, and posting fake news online, specifically about terrorist attacks or airport security. So basically, the government in China, they pretty much want to know what you're doing on a daily basis. Okay, you pretty much have no freedom there. It says other potential punishable offenses include spending too long playing video games, wasting money on frivolous purchases, and posting on social media. It says punishments include travel bans and slow internet. China has already started punishing people by restricting their travel, including banning them from flights. Authorities banned people from purchasing flights 17.5 million times by the end of 2018, according to the National Public Credit Information Center, as The Guardian reported. They can also clamp down on luxury options. Many are barred from getting business class train tickets, and some are kept out of the best hotels. So pretty much you can't even live life. You can't even do the basic things that Americans even do on a regular basis. The eventual system will punish bad passengers specifically. Potential misdeeds include trying to ride with no ticket, loitering in front of boarding gates, or smoking in non-smoking areas. According to Rachel Botsman, an author who published part of her book on tech security on Wired in 2017, says that the government will throttle your internet speeds as a punishment, though the exact mechanics still haven't been made clear. According to Foreign Policy, credit systems monitor whether people pay bills on time, much like financial credit trackers, but also ascribe a moral dimension. You or your kids could also miss out on the best jobs and schools. 17 people who refused to carry out military service in 2017 were barred from enrolling in higher education, applying for high school, or continuing their studies, Beijing News reported. And they plan on implementing this shit in America full swing very, very soon. But due to the Constitution, they can't implement this blatantly compared to other countries. Like, they have to do things very subtly, like stage false flag events, and as well as implement a whole bunch of other chaotic situations in order to psychologically manipulate people into bending down to the system, into accepting whatever they throw at them. Alright, so I put up this good video that details the average Chinese citizen's life under the social credit system. Check it out.
Joe Aini is retired, but when her town was brought into a new government program, her services were required. Now, she gets paid about $50 a month to watch and record the lives of her 3,000 neighbors, as one of 6 so-called information collectors. China started piloting its social score system in 2015 in villages like this one. Here's how it works. You start with 1,000 points. If you do something bad, you get points docked. If you do something good and you happen to be spotted, you get a boost.
就是我们有人，比方说是跟几个小村内哈，来听到的这是好嘢好事啊，我在书写的这上面。
These journals, filled with tales of neighbors helping old people or seen leaving trash in hallways, end up in a local office. A government employee gives each entry a score. The The results go public.
就是我们吃的往脚水里，这个了保洁员哈写到了钱包哈，但是他就马上就送到了这个哈陈菊花哈，为了大事业哈，一个戏剧哈做里面进去，这不是找这面进去送到菊花哈，表扬他心境不美哈，凭借了高下。
On top of that, he got this didn't pocket the money he found trophy. Raising his score could mean more money later, with lower interest loans and discounts on utilities and rent.
你像我们现在是那个社区里的邻里非常和睦，没有一个是邻里打架的，一个都没有。因为咱现在生活也好了，也不至于啊。
Wang Fengbo thinks the system isn't just about the points. It works because people want to save face.
我这个节约喝酒，喝酒回家和老婆俩打架，老婆都打碎了。这也是你夫妻打架，因为这造成影响也不好，我们也不一分。他这还来找我呀，学呀，哎呀，这按多少打架，那讲这写上，因为都要爱面子。你给他写这啥？你写好，学你好，哎，你写肯定是写了是脸上表面很光彩。你写的不好，他写的他脸上也不光彩，呀，还有指名啊。
But the program is more than just public naming and shaming. If someone slips below 1,000 points, even just a little, there are serious consequences.
1级950分，B级意味着你B级意味着你将来坐飞机呀、高消费呀，或者是什么贷款啊都不能做了，都不可以。
Zhang Yingjie co-signed a loan for a friend who later skipped out. He paid his share, but the local court didn't care.
我前2天去淄博，赶上暑假没有票了，我就得买这个头等舱，结果是说你信用度不够，不能买头等舱。我回来没办法，不能还是没有座位，回来坐这个大巴，高铁不是3个小时、4个小时就到了，大巴车得10个多小时。
4 million people have been blocked from buying high-speed train tickets over low social credit, and more than 11 million from buying flights. To raise his score, Zhang gets in line at a local community office to donate money the government says will go to charity.
捐100之多啊，再有捐1000的、600的、500的都有，都可以加分。
Zhang keeps track of his social score closely, but he doesn't keep track of where his donations end up.
这个具体给谁办的钱？你问具体得问他，我也不知道这个事。
手写字吗？
我现在已经通过训写，通过捐款啊，通过做义工来给自己加分。
The system might have caused him to suffer, but Zhang is unwavering in his support for the government's push to score him.
这是通过这种制度来约束很多不自觉的人。
By 2020, China plans to track, rate, reward, and punish all of its citizens, essentially turning every personal experience into a transaction. Not that Zhang minds. He's got his high score back. At least for now.
现在通过做好人好事，通过这个捐款呐、加分呐，我现在高铁票能买了，终于成为是正常人了。
That man sounds so soulless. He pretty much has the spirit of a happy slave, man. Right? And you're going to have a lot of people that carry on that exact same spirit once this beast system gets implemented full swing. All right, and a system like this is coming to America very, very soon. All right, so be mindful and be watchful of this. So pretty much in conclusion, these are one of the many ways that the powers that be are going to come after you. Right? They're going to try to defame your character, try to take away your way of life. They're going to do everything in their power to get you to fold and to get you to break. Okay? This is what they have planned for you. So be watchful of this, be mindful of it, and stay vigilant. Because it's going to get rough. Very rough.